Hello, this is Mr. Chabry, and we are here with another narrated Pokemon battle. So this is going to be an overused battle against Gamer MZ. And the Pokemon I really want to try out in this battle is going to be Haxorus, Kartana, Togekiss, because of course the NGDL is something that we're going to get some nice battles in, and I would like to get some more experience with these said Pokemon. So looking at my opponent's team, it seems like Zapdos is probably the safest thing to lead. However, my opponent does have this Garchomp. I'm going to go Hidden Power Ice, and we get lucky there with the Stone Edge miss. That would have actually probably hurt us a lot. So I'm going to go ahead, Hidden Power Ice, and do some nice damage on that Garchomp here. I don't want to risk another miss with that Stone Edge. I'm going to go ahead and just switch out, play it safe, go into Toxapex because I'm pretty sure Earthquake is not going to happen, but my opponent goes into Heatran here. So Heatran, I'm kind of scared of Earth Power. However, I guess my opponent's scared of a Scald maybe scared of me setting up Toxic Spikes. So it goes into the Ferrothorn. I'm going to go ahead and just get those Toxic Spikes up. Looking at my opponent's team, he does have the Superior, which often has Defog. I think Lando gets Defog as well, but I think it would be nice to have those Toxic Spikes up, mainly for Superior, for Garchomp, for the Mega Alakazam, because those three are kind of huge threats on my opponent's team, and it would be really nice to get that. I'm going to be Leech Seeded. I don't want to stay in here while this thing is sapping health away from my Toxapex, so I'm going to go into my Heatran. As my opponent goes for the Gyro Ball, I'm trying to get a little bit extra chip damage on the Pex, I guess. But yeah, I'm going to go into my Heatran, and I'm actually going to Earth Power. I kind of thought maybe my opponent would go into his own Heatran here, but unfortunately, that play did not pay off at all for me. So if I went for Magma Storm, this thing would have been gone. But I went for Earth Power because I thought Heatran might come out, and that doesn't pay off. So now this thing is going to sit here and sap some health away from my Heatran. And now my opponent's going to protect, as this time I go for a taunt. I probably should have done that first turn. That would have been the most advantageous play, I think, looking back at it. That way we wouldn't have to worry about the Leech Seed, the Protect, and what else this thing might have. So yeah, we're going to go ahead, do that, but now I have to switch out. I can't risk, trying to over-predict everything. If I go Magma Storm, this thing will go down, but my opponent can easily go into Heatran. So here I'm going to make the switch as my opponent does go into Heatran here. I could have Earth Powered. That would have been really nice, taking out this Heatran so I can safely Magma Storm things. But as it is, I've got my Zapdos here, and I actually want to try to paralyze this thing. That's actually what I'm playing for right now, to get the paralysis on this thing. That way my Heatran has the advantage if they have to go one-on-one. But I'm going to get stuck in here with the Magma Storm. There's not much I can do about that. I'm stuck in here now unless my opponent switches out. So I'm just going to have to go for a move. Of course, my opponent does switch out and go into Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn can take pretty much a discharge very safely from me. Even Hidden Power Ice, Ferrothorn can take very nicely. I'm going to Roost here. I'm trying to get some health back because looking at it, Zapdos, I kind of need Zapdos. So here, I do have Heat Wave on this thing. And last time, my opponent, predicted me not to go for the Fire move and stayed in with Ferrothorn. Here, I'm hoping the same thing kind of plays out. But my opponent actually predicts me, and I'm going to go for the Heat Wave and just boost this thing's Fire-type moves. So, honestly, Heatran right now is kind of a big threat to me. I'm just going to stay in, go Discharge. I don't have a good switch into this thing, and I'm going to get a crit, which really, really helps me out. But unfortunately, we don't get that paralysis, and that's what I really, really wanted. We get hit by another Magma Storm here. Here, if I go for a Roost, of course, I'm not going to be able to live a hit from this Magma Storm, so we're going to have to do some predictions here. Of course, Heatran's not going to live another Discharge. So here, I'm actually just going to go ahead, Discharge, predict my opponent to stay in, predicting me to Roost, and it ends up paying off for me. So that ends up working out nicely. We get rid of Heatran, which is very good. That means my Fire-type moves are going to be more reliable here. Of course, my opponent still has Garchomp, but yeah, we can at least hit Garchomp and not worry about it boosting up its own moves. So here, Superior comes in, and I'm going to go into Heatran, predicting a defog here. My opponent probably doesn't want these toxic spikes to stay on the field. The good thing is this thing has been toxic poisoned, so even when it starts getting a bunch of boost, it's going to be on a timer. And the reason I'm going into Heatran is because most Superiors, they have Hidden Power Fire as a move. You know, Leaf Storm, of course, is their main attacking move. I'm going to Taunt, just in case this thing might have Substitute. Luckily, my opponent goes for the Leaf Storm, so if it does have Substitute, it's not going to be able to go for it. Of course, if my opponent went for Substitute, I would be in a bad position. But my opponent's going to start setting up some special attack boost here, and I'm just going to go ahead and Magma Storm, get rid of this thing now that I can. So with that Magma Storm, we will get rid of the Superior, but I guess my opponent did what he wanted to do with the Superior, get rid of those toxic spikes. So now my opponent is going to go into the Garchomp, and like I said earlier, I have no switch into Garchomp. So I'm going to actually stay on with Heatran, sack it off, and that way I can bring something in pretty safely. And I'm going to go into Kartana. So Kartana is Scarfed. This thing is a really nice mon. I love Kartana. And honestly, even if my opponent goes into Lando and gets that Intimidate, Kartana still will do a big chunk of damage. And I'm going to go Leaf Blade. With that Heatran gone, there's not really a good switch in for this thing. And even with that Intimidate, Leaf Blade's able to do over half. So now my opponent does bring in the Ferrothorn. I'm just going to go ahead and Leaf Blade again, because if my opponent does stay in with that Lando, we will take it out. So there's not a reason to overpredict. We can get rid of that Lando. My opponent does bring in the Ferrothorn, though. Honestly, Ferrothorn is the only thing that gives Kartana trouble. So once Ferrothorn is gone, Kartana basically has free reign of the rest of my opponent's team. And the best way I can see of getting rid of Ferrothorn is to go into Zapdos. And honestly, I just went into Zapdos, but my opponent makes the prediction and goes into Lando. So maybe my opponent wasn't predicting there. Maybe my opponent was just trying to get another Intimidate, which would have made Lando able to live another Leaf Blade. But honestly, I didn't want to stay in. Kartana is going to be taking more damage from Ferrothorn than doing more damage. So here I'm going to send out Togekiss. Looking at my opponent's team, Togekiss doesn't do anything at this point. So honestly, I am sacking Togekiss off here. And we're going to take our Rock Slide. And now my opponent does switch out that Lando, goes into Ferrothorn. Like I said, Ferrothorn, there's not much that some of my Pokemon can do. Togekiss can't really touch this thing very well. So what I'm going to have to do is try to Air Slash. That's my only attacking move on this Togekiss. This is more of a support Togekiss with Defog and Heal Bell and Roost, so I can heal myself up. But its only attacking move is that Air Slash, so there is a chance I could flinch this Ferrothorn out, and I'm going to go ahead and try to take that chance. But unfortunately, we're not going to get to flinch this thing out, and it's going to set up Leech Seeds on me. And we've already seen this thing carrying Protect. So, honestly, I'm going to end up healing this thing off if I just stay in with Togekiss. And honestly, I think it would be nice to have Togekiss as something to throw out there just to let go down so I have a free switch. So I'm going to actually save Togekiss for that. Going to go into Zapdos. Like we've already seen, there's not much that Ferrothorn can do to Zapdos. It's going to go for the Gyro Ball here, which honestly does not much to Zapdos. This is my bulkier Zapdos, and it takes that like a champ. So here, I can easily get a Roost off if I feel like I need to. I could just go for a Heat Wave. So here, I'm actually going to Roost though, predicting a switch. Get some health back. I feel like that's probably the best play, but my opponent actually stays in with a Ferrothorn. What I probably should have done was go hard Heat Wave and get rid of this, because honestly, if I get rid of this thing, that means Kartana has free reign at the end of the game. But unfortunately, we're not going to get the Heat Wave. My opponent's not going to let me have that. So yeah, I mean, I didn't want to overpredict though, because my opponent could easily bring in the Garchomp on my Zapdos. and that way Heat Wave won't touch it very much, and then Garchomp would just take Zapdos out with a Stone Edge. So honestly, I felt like going for Roost was the safest play. Unfortunately, Ferrothorn here is healed itself all the way back up to full, and that's kind of annoying. Ferrothorn is a very, very bulky mon. So here I'm going to go Hidden Power, expecting Garchomp maybe to come in. I should have just Heat Waved here, as my opponent actually goes for the Power Whip. Probably predicting me to switch out into something, probably just wanting to get a little bit more chip damage on me, you know, and let Ferrothorn go down maybe. I don't know, but honestly, Ferrothorn right at this moment is one of the toughest mons that I'm going to have to break through for this game. So now my opponent does switch out the Ferrothorn and goes into Harry Potter. This is the Alakazam. This thing is honestly another threatening mon, especially if I accidentally, you know, have my Kartana out when this thing gets the traceability. I don't want this thing to steal my Beast Boost ability, because then that would mean this thing is a huge threat. I've swept so many teams with Mega Alakazam stealing the Beast Boost ability and just sweeping up the rest of the team. So I'm not going to let it have my Beast Boost. I really don't want it to have that. So here I'm just going to go ahead, let it Mega Evolve. I'm going to go Discharge here. I'm hoping I can live some hits from this thing. So that way I can possibly paralyze it. If I paralyze it, that's going to make it a little bit easier for me to handle. So we're going to take a Psychic to the face. Luckily, we actually lived that. We go for Discharge. Let's hope we get the paralysis, and we don't. The thing about Mega Alakazam is it does have some good special defense bulk, but it's very frail on that physical side. So any chip damage I do on this thing is good damage. But unfortunately, it's going to start healing itself back up. I can't stay in. I still feel like I need Zapdos, especially for Ferrothorn. If I don't use Zapdos to get rid of Ferrothorn, Ferrothorn is just a big problem for me. So I'm going to go Togekiss. It's a good thing I saved it to sack off, so that way I can have a free switch into something. So here, we're just going to let Togekiss go down. Unfortunately, Togekiss still might have been okay to hold on to. That's, you know, because I would have rather had another Pokemon out here to use Togekiss as my just sack off Pokemon. But I'll take this Alakazam, because Alakazam is such a big threat. So I'm going to send out Kartana, and this time I'm going to actually just go for the Leaf Blade. I don't want to over-predict. I do have Sacred Sword, and I knew Ferrothorn might come out, but I still didn't want to over-predict, because if I went Sacred Sword, Alakazam would just, you know, there's nothing I've got on my team to face Alakazam. Kartana is my only hope. Here I'm going to Leaf Blade again. Even though it's doing more damage to me, I didn't want to switch and then have my opponent predict my switch. So that's why I went ahead. My opponent actually did predict the switch and went for the Leech Seed here. So it would be so nice if I could get that Sacred Sword off. I would be doing more damage to Ferrothorn than it's doing to me. But here, at this moment, I think my best bet is to go into Haxorus here and hopefully get some nice setup and damage on this thing. And that's the only way I could see maybe powering through this Ferrothorn. We take the Power Whip. That's not a big deal because Haxorus resists Grass-type moves. But here I'm going to Dragon Dance. I know it's a risky play because this thing has Gyro Ball, but I know to break through this bulk on this thing, I'm going to have to boost my attack. And Haxorus has a crazy attack stat. It has 147. So luckily we do live that Gyro Ball, so that means I've got one hit with this Haxorus. I need to make it count. I'm going to go for an Earthquake here. Hopefully I can break through this thing's bulky defense, but it only does half. Even with that crazy high stat and the boost, we only do half. So this thing is still going to be a problem for me, and I need to break through it. But it's still going to be a problem. Here I'm going to go Zapdos. Like I said, Zapdos is my best bet at taking this thing out. And there's been so much predictions here. I'm thinking it's pretty safe my opponent goes for a Protect. So I'm going to Heat Wave just in case my opponent Leech Seeds, predicting me to Discharge maybe, Hidden Power Ice. Honestly, Zapdos has the potential of helping me win this game. It just goes down to predictions. So here, I do think my opponent will switch out. I highly doubt my opponent will let me just Heat Wave this thing in the face. Yeah, we're going to see the Mega Alakazam come back in, and get my pressure ability. That doesn't matter too much. Even with me thinking my opponent might switch, I feel like Heat Wave is probably the safest play, because of course it hits Ferrothorn if my opponent predicts me to stay in, but it also does some nice chip damage on this thing, and honestly that's what I needed at the point, some more chip damage on this. And I'm going to go into Toxapex now, mainly because that way I don't have to worry about this thing tracing Regenerator. And looking at my opponent's team, Toxapex does nothing at this point. My opponent has the Ferrothorn. Toxapex can't touch that. Garchomp, Lando will take out Toxapex with Earthquake, and this thing will take it out with Psychic. So honestly here, I have to sack off the Toxapex. And at this point, Kartana is the last hope. Kartana, honestly, I feel like Kartana is the only thing that can turn this game around for me. So I'm going to go into my Kartana. And here, I know Ferrothorn is a possible switch in here. I'm going to go Sacred Sword here. That's the only way I can win this, if we could take this thing out with a Sacred Sword. Unfortunately, we don't, so we're going to get hit with the Iron Barb. That's doing some extra damage to us. But now that my opponent knows that I'm locked into Sacred Sword, my opponent can actually, you know, switch out accordingly. So I'm going to actually switch out, predicting my opponent to switch out, and go into my Zapdos. As my opponent actually just goes for a Protect. Probably what I should have done was just Sacred Sword again. But honestly, at this point, I think it's more or less I'm kind of in a bad situation. Because there's not much I can really do. I need to Roost here because my opponent went for Protect, and it failed. So my opponent does have that Protect option open. So I'm going to actually Roost. As my opponent actually predicts me to Roost here, and goes for the Leech Seed, so that's going to make it a little bit tougher for me here. I really need to get rid of this thing in order for Kartana to have free reign. If I can get rid of this thing, I'm pretty sure Kartana might be able to finish up the game with some Leaf Blades. Of course, if my opponent plays it right, it's still iffy for me though, because my opponent can, you know, intimidate me with that Lando, switch out, and then bring Lando back in for another Intimidate. But honestly, I'm thinking Kartana should 1v1 Mega Alakazam, and I'm trying to hit this Ferrothorn so that way Kartana can come in and finish the game. But unfortunately, we're going to have a Protect here, and this Ferrothorn is going to heal back up to the range where Kartana might not be able to take it out. So at this point, things are not looking good for me. I only have two Pokemon, Zapdos and Kartana, and I need both of those in good health to win the game. So here my opponent does make the switch. I'm hoping Heat Wave has enough damage that it can take it out, but no, it doesn't. But we do get the burn, and that's the main thing I needed at this point, a burn on this Garchomp. So with that being said, we still have a chance, because now we should be able to live a Stone Edge without, you know, crit, because Stone Edge can crit very often. So if we don't get critted, we still have a slight chance. However, honestly, it's not looking as good as I would have hoped though, because Zapdos is so low on health at this moment. So yeah, all my opponent has to do is go into Mega Alakazam, revenge kill my Zapdos, because I can't switch into Kartana, and we lose Zapdos no matter what here. And then Lando is easily a Pokemon to bring in. I can't break through Ferrothorn with Leaf Blade or Smart Strike. I can't break through Lando with Sacred Sword, and that with Zapdos going down here, that just means Kartana is not going to be able to finish the game. So I'm going to go ahead and play the game out, even though I already know Kartana is not going to be able to. I'll have to pick a move to lock myself into. No matter what move I go for, my opponent has something to answer that, and I could have went Leaf Blade, but honestly, Leaf Blade won't break through Ferrothorn. We've already seen it barely does anything. So I'm going to go Sacred Sword. That would have taken care of Alakazam, that would have taken care of Ferrothorn, but the one thing it wouldn't be able to take care of is this Lando, and Lando is the thing that comes in. So honestly, what I would have needed was a crit on both Sacred Swords, and my opponent actually just goes for Explosion to end the game here. This thing has the normal gem too, so that's just extra power behind that punch. So unfortunately, Kartana didn't have what it takes to finish the game, but I was pretty sure we were done for when Zapdos was that low on health. And honestly, Alakazam could have easily came in and revenge killed us. So, good game, Gamer MZ. This is actually one of the longest battles I've ever had. There was a lot of over predictions, a lot of, you know, trying to predict what the opponent's doing. I really like those games. I know a lot of people don't like the games that take a while because of trying to out-predict each other, but those are the games that I love the most because you're on the edge of your seat. You don't know what's going to happen. This Pokemon can take out either Pokemon your opponent might switch in, so it's down to if your opponent picks the right Pokemon to send out to take whatever your opponent thinks you're going to go for. Those are the games that I think are really awesome. So if you like this, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. I will see you in the next Pokemon video.